the brain might have flown out the other side of the canvas by this time. My name's Matt Buck, and I'm a tattooer, and I work at No Idols Tattoo in New York City. I studied under a guy named Attila Hedja, who taught me pretty much everything I know about drawing and painting. And he was mentored by a guy named Harold Stevenson, who was mentored by a guy you might have heard of named Norman Rockwell.
What inspired the light depicted in these works?
Well, I was really, like most people, inspired by Rembrandt and the way that he would light his paintings and the sort of soft glow that he would get in the background behind their heads that would kind of give a nice contrast between the darks and the lights.
What was the process of making these portraits?
In this series, most of the faces were painted from imagination. This one, though, I had taken a still from a video of someone I just thought had a pretty face. For the outfits, I used the reference I got was I was watching that show, The Tudors, because they used the real period costumes that these people actually wore in life from like the British Museum. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna split their heads apart somehow. I'm gonna maybe give them sort of unrealistic skin colors, different in each one, and I'll give them each a little flying critter. So this one I chose to do a butterfly, and I kind of wanted to give it sort of the impression with the way that I painted the background as well, that there was like a flap of the butterfly's wings that was kind of blowing her mind apart, and it was based a little bit on that idea of the butterfly effect of like one flap of the wings of a butterfly could, alter the course of, history. It could cause a whirlwind on the other side of the world through a chain of events.
Who are some of the artists that inspire your work as a painter and tattooer?
Michelangelo, and the way that he drew bodies, there's just something really special about that I'm trying to capture when I do figurative tattoos, and also a lot of kind of medieval iconography and illuminated manuscripts. I feel like those, they have this little kind of vignette, one-off kind of quality that I think there's a lot of carryover potential into tattooing. So I've been looking at a lot of that sort of stuff. Also, I just got married and had to design my own ketubah, so looking at a lot of older, middle-aged ketubah designs.
What's a ketubah?
It's this Jewish tradition in weddings where you have a marriage contract, and it's this old Aramaic text that has to be written in Hebrew, and it's usually pretty big, and you're supposed to make it as beautiful as you can possibly make it. So there are all these elaborately designed old wedding contracts that you'll see out there, and there's more modern ones, but just kind of like watercolor fades and stuff, which is all right. But I wanted something a little more classical looking. So yeah, doing a lot of research on old ketubahs really gave me an appreciation for architectural details, because there's a lot of motifs of columns and little things like that in there. So doing those and little animals that you find in a lot of old medieval illustrations is something that I'm also carrying over now more into my tattooing as well.
Is the process of oil painting very different from tattooing?
For instance, when I was being trained in classical art, my mentor, Attila, he always told us, realistic objects, they don't have Mickey Mouse hard black outlines around them. And now in tattooing, that's pretty much all I do in every tattoo. But there's a reason for that, and that's like, you don't do an oil painting with, lean over fat. You do fat over lean, because, that's how it's going to stand the test of time and not crack. The same way with tattooing. The ink will spread over time, and black ink is the longest lasting one, so you need to sort of create like a framework for the tattoo, which is the black outline. So appreciating that is something that I didn't get in my fine art background, but that I picked up pretty quickly, that's an essential in tattooing. I was able to carry over some of the other things that I learned in fine art, like how to draw hands and faces and use of light sources and color theory and warm-cold contrast and things like that. So that's definitely something that people in tattooing could benefit from, is knowing the fundamentals of how to draw and paint realistically, because European academic realism, as my mentor Attila put it, is like the language of art. And if you want to have a style, like in tattooing, you gotta know the language first. Like if you're gonna write poetry, you gotta be fluent in the language before you write poetry. You gotta know the rules before you break them. So that's something that people that have all these crazy cool styles in tattooing could definitely benefit from more, by actually knowing the language that they're trying to write poetry, have a style. And as far as what people in fine art could carry over from tattooing, the graphic punch. Yeah, oil painting is a lot different. The way that you apply the medium is just so different. Because with oil painting, you can either have like this thick, juicy, loaded up brush, or you can glaze them with different effects. With tattooing, with color at least, you've got to really pack that in there. You got to keep going over and over the area until that color is in there solidly. You can't just do a quick pass and it's just on there. It's not going to hold up that way. So they can both be really methodical, but I feel like there's a lot more forgiveness in oil painting than there is in tattooing. Like you can mess around with an oil painting and get something cool. You can't really mess around with a tattoo and get something.
How have your tattoos changed over the years?
Definitely looking at my drawings from when I first started tattooing, when I was just coming out of like all the fine art illustration stuff, and I thought I knew composition, and now looking at them 6 years later and the kind of compositional choices I'll make, they're definitely more intentional and they're more well thought out about emphasizing the impact on initial glance.
Does your classical training give you an edge in your tattooing?
I feel like there's definitely a large aspect of designing a tattoo where you have to consider the composition of what you're doing, and so having the classical training in anatomy kind of let me know exactly, if we want to call the person a canvas, like how to design, instead of like within a square format, designing on, anatomy and having sculpted and painted the human body a little bit. Definitely there's a large carryover.
How did you choose the vibrant colors of the palette in this series of paintings?
I wanted to, painting them all in like browns and yellow ochres would have been a little boring, so I decided to mix it up and go for kind of like an oil slick kind of feel, how you can get all these different hues and variations of colors that are, it's almost like you got the whole rainbow in there, but it's muted.
Did you enjoy the effect our Lavender Damar Varnish had on your painting?
Yeah, I couldn't be more pleased with the varnish. I was amazed how the colors changed. It looked like they're new paintings almost, but not in a surprising way, but in a, wow, this is how I want them to look, like glowy and juicy, and it just gives it so much more of a complete feeling. I couldn't be more pleased with them.